and welcome to the TinkerCAD 3D Design online module. My name is Jennifer Taylor, and I'm with the Integrated Teaching and Learning Program based at the University of Colorado, Boulder. If you are a K-12 student, please take the pre-survey for the module. You can find the link in the accompanying slide deck or use the URL that's listed below. This module is broken into 3 sessions. The first session will be an introduction to TinkerCAD and CAD. Before we dive into those, take a moment and stop this video and watch Sydney's TinkerCAD story to see how she uses TinkerCAD to help her BMX racing. So what is CAD? CAD stands for Computer Aided Design, and a lot of different STEM experts use it to create really precise drawings and models of objects. Do you know which object is in 2 dimensions and which object is in 3 dimensions? If you pick the one on the left as being 2 dimensions, you're right, we call that 2D or a side view. The object on the right is in a 3-dimensional view or 3D view. When you measure in 2D, you measure objects with a length and a width. When measuring in 3D, you measure with length, width, and add the 3rd dimension of height. We call looking at objects different ways spatial visualization. You can look at things in 3D view, like the top image of the dice, also known as an isometric view. Or you can look at objects in a 2D or flat view, which we also call orthographic view. You can tell in the isometric view at the top of the dice that you're seeing more than one face at a time in 3 dimensions. When you're looking at it in an orthographic or 2-dimension view, you only see one side of the dice at a time. In TinkerCAD, we'll be working in 3 dimensions. Before we start with TinkerCAD, here are a few important tips. It's best to always use a mouse. It's less frustrating and more accurate. The default measurement is in millimeters, so it's best to keep it in the metric system. If you ever need to return to your project homepage, click on the colorful upper left waffle box icon of the TinkerCAD logo. We're going to be combining shapes to create new designs, so you want to make sure that your shapes are touching and that your project is flat on the work plane for printing or laser cutting. Go ahead and log into tinkercad.com, sign in, or join now to create your account. There's 2 ways to create a TinkerCAD account. If you're a student that's part of a classroom with a Gmail account, your teacher will send you an invite, and you will log in with your Gmail account. Otherwise, you can create your own personal account and sign up with your email. TinkerCAD has lots of tutorials under the Learn tab. There's starters, lessons, and projects to help you build your skills. For session 2, we're going to learn about the TinkerCAD Interface and do a simple keychain project. Let's take a tour of the TinkerCAD project page. Again, log in using tinkercad.com and use the waffle icon in the upper left to return to your project homepage. In the upper right are different TinkerCAD resources. TinkerCAD has multiple applications. In addition to 3D design, there's also circuits and code blocks that you can explore. We're going to use the 3D design option and then create a new design. When you select those, you'll be taken to your TinkerCAD work plane. This is the default setting. You'll notice that it has a unique name. You can just click in that text box and rename your project. The nice thing about TinkerCAD is it auto-saves, so you're never going to lose your project or your work. You can view your project in the default TinkerCAD setting, but there's also ways to look at it in a Minecraft block design or Lego block design. For the purposes of building and printing or laser cutting, it's best to leave it in the default 3D design view. In the upper left, you'll see the typical copy, paste, duplicate, delete options for your objects. You can also use the back arrow or Control-Z to undo a move, or Control-Y or the forward arrow to redo it. In the right navbar section, you'll see the Show All, the Group, Ungroup, Align, and Mirror options. You can also manage your files by importing, exporting, and sharing them. You can add additional work planes if you're building objects in height, and use a ruler for more precise measurements. The default setting is 1 millimeter for the grid, but you can edit the work plane settings depending on the size of your project. Here are the project view options. The home icon lets you get back to the default view. The dotted box lets you zoom into your project. The plus lets you zoom in even more. The minus lets you zoom out. And you can toggle between a 2D or 3D view. It's best to leave it in the 3D setting. You can also right-click to rotate an object or left-click to move a selected object. You'll be using the drop-down TinkerCAD Basic Shapes menu to help build your designs. There's also options, in addition to shapes, for text and numbers, characters, and connectors. So clicking and dragging a box onto the work plane. You notice that dimensions show up. If you click on the white handles, you'll be able to change the dimensions of your objects by directly typing into the text boxes. The cone at the top of an object enables you to raise or lower an object. The arrows along the base of an object allow you to rotate it, and the arrows at the top of an object enable you to tilt it. So remember to have your project flat on the workspace. Make sure your objects are touching. If you make a mistake, just do Control-Z or undo. Definitely don't get frustrated, but have fun. When you are logged into your TinkerCAD account, you'll be on your project homepage. It will default to 3D designs, and we can go ahead and click to create new design to start our keychain project. You'll notice that a default name populates. So let's go ahead and click here and rename it to be Keychain Project. Your project will auto-save, and you can return to your project home page by clicking on the TinkerCAD icon. To build our project, let's left-click with the mouse and drag a box onto the work plane. Clicking on the white handles enables you to change the dimensions of an object. So our keychain will be 30 millimeters wide by 50 millimeters long and 5 millimeters high. You can left-click to deselect that object. Now under our Basic Shapes menu, we're going to add the handle for our keychain. So scroll down till you find the tube shape and left-click and drag that to the work plane. The handle dimensions are 30 by 30 by 5. So our next step is to join the handle and the keychain base together. You can left click and drag the handle and try to line it best that you can. But let's get the top view and see. To ensure that it is aligned, left click and drag a box around all the objects to select all, and you'll notice that the Align tool is now engaged. When you click on the Align tool, these handles will show up. As you select them, they turn red and you get a preview of where the objects will align to. We're going to align along the center midline, so click that option. And then left click to deselect. Now the objects are aligned, but they're not grouped. You can tell because they are different colors still. So to group, left click a box to select all objects, and you'll notice that the group tool is now also enabled. And watch what happens when we click the group icon. The objects have turned the same color, and so now we know they are a single object. Our next step is to add our name to our keychain. So under the Basic Shapes drop-down menu, select Text and Numbers. And left-click and drag a text box onto the work plane. In the text box, you can delete the word and go ahead and type in the name of who your keychain's for. With the object selected, let's go ahead and make it a negative space or a hole. If you look at the top, the name is too big to fit into our keychain, so we'll need to redesign the dimensions on that. So select the name, click on the left handles, And let's make it fit within that 30 by 50 space. I'll do 20 by 40 by 5. Now we're going to left click and drag the name onto the keychain. We want to again align it, so let's do a top view. Left click and drag a box around to select all, which enables our align tool. And again, we're going to use the center line to align the two objects. Looks good. Now remember, we need to group the objects. So we'll select all with a box around and then select the group tool. So now a negative space has been created inside our keychain for when we laser cut or 3D print. So if you now click the TinkerCAD icon logo, you'll return to your project homepage and you will see your keychain project available. You can then re-tinker it, or you can choose different ways to manage your file. Congratulations on your first TinkerCAD project. For session 3, we're going to build more advanced skills using TinkerCAD by creating a smartphone amplifier. Once you're logged into your TinkerCAD account, you can access the smartphone amplifier project under the Learn tab, click on Projects, then select See All Projects, scroll down to the Build a Mobile Amplifier file. You can go through this project in a step-by-step way, or for this tutorial, we're going to go and create it as a new design. The first step is to drag and drop a cylinder onto the work plane. This cylinder will be 70 millimeters by 70 millimeters by 110 millimeters. As you can see, it's quite large, so we're going to zoom out here. And now we're going to drag a second cylinder onto the work plane. And we're going to change its dimensions to be slightly smaller. So 60 by 60 by 100. Now we're going to drag these two cylinders near each other. And the second cylinder that we created, we're going to make that turn into a hole to be a negative space. So now we want to align our cylinders. And to do that, we'll zoom out once more, and we will left click and drag a box around both objects, choose the Align tool, and we're going to align them at the top edge first. And now we're going to select and align them along the midline, and then we're going to overlap them. So as you can see now, the tube or the cylinder that's a hole is inside the other cylinder. We'll zoom out again. So now we need to combine and group them. So left click and drag a box around the cylinders and select the group tool. Now when you look at the top, you can see that it is a hollow cylinder. The next thing we're going to do is now take the arrow handles at the top, and we're going to tilt it to be a 45-degree angle. Doesn't matter if you tilt it to the right or the left. Now we're going to create the base for our smartphone amplifier by dragging a box onto the work plane, and we're going to change the dimensions, and we'll have the dimensions be the same width on one side at 70 millimeters, and we'll make the front length be 80 and keep it at the default of 20 millimeters. So now we're going to align by left click and drag these two objects, and we're going to select, choose the Align tool, and we want them to align along the midline again. So if we look at the top view, we can see that they're pretty well centered. And now we're just going to deselect by clicking anywhere with the left mouse And we'll zoom out and we'll get a front view. And you'll see that a portion of the cylinder is protruding below the plane, and that's okay. We will take care of that in just a moment. But let's go back to our regular view and to the top, and it looks like it's a little bit off-centered still. So let's go ahead and just keep working with the Align tool to get them to be centered. It just takes a bit of practice and you'll learn what works best as you're working through different projects. And now we're going to drag and drop another box to take off that portion of the cylinder that is protruding below the base. So we'll make it 40 by 40. And we're going to turn this box into a hole, which will again remove that portion of the cylinder below the work plane. And again, the black cone will enable you to raise and lower an object. And you can just align it with the work plane. And let's go and look at the bottom view. And now we can just drag this over. And it looks like we might need to make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it be 50 by 50. And that looks pretty good. I think we're lined up pretty well for that. Okay, let's go back to our regular view here. And we'll zoom out. So now what we're going to do is left click and drag all objects. You can tell that all objects are selected once there's a blue halo around each object. And now we're going to group them and watch what happens. The base that was protruding with the cylinder below the work plane is now gone, and now both objects are the same color, which means they are now combined. So go back to our regular view and zoom out. And this will be the slot that will be cut into the cylinder to hold the smartphone. So we'll make it the same width as our cylinder, 70, and then it'll be as wide as your phone, just a little bit bigger. My phone is 11 millimeters, so I'm going to go probably up to 15 millimeters, so it'll be able to get it in and out easily. And I'll make it a little bit deeper than 20, we'll go 30 millimeters. And now we're going to turn this box into a hole and use the black arrow to raise it, and we'll bring it into our cylinder. And let's maybe zoom in a touch bit more. And again, we can use the arrows to tilt the slot so that it fits within our smartphone. Drag it a little bit further down. There we go. Looks good so far. And we can just right mouse click and drag around to see if things look pretty even. Zoom out. Let's go ahead and select all. The Align tool. Let's align everything along that midline again. And we'll go back to the top. Looks pretty good. All right, so now the final trick. We need to left click select and group and watch what happens with the slot that we've created. It gets cut out of our smartphone amplifier, so we have a spot to put the phone and to play some music. Now comes the fun part. You can choose to change the color of your amplifier. You can add on different characters and different funky little objects, anything to make it your own. You can put your name on it, and there you go. And don't forget, always rename, if you'd like, the default title, and we'll just call it a phone speaker. And if we click back to our home page, you will now see that the project that we just tinkered is here. We can re-tinker it and manage it as well. Nice work. You can then save and export your design. You can rename it and export it to the 3D print option that works for you, or save it as a laser cutting file. Once it's downloaded, you can share your file. If you don't have a 3D printer, TinkerCAD has links to on-demand 3D printing that you can share your file to and get your project printed and shipped to you. You can also check your local library and makerspace for 3D printing options. Feel free to choose other TinkerCAD 3D projects to tinker with, and also share and download and tinker other folks' ideas through Instructables or Thingiverse. Now that you've finished this module, please take the post survey. You can find the link in the accompanying slide deck or use the URL that's posted below. Thanks so much for doing the module. We hope you enjoyed TinkerCAD. Have fun. Keep tinkering.